Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the weather warnings as we have got another rain warning issued for tomorrow for southern England, as we are going to see an area of very heavy rain just about clip inland for southern and southeastern areas. There still is quite a bit of uncertainty how northward the rain does get, but it has trended northwards over the last 24 hours or so since the last video. So that's why we now have a warning issued, and we'll look at that in detail on the latest UKV. Along with that, on the latest UKV, we'll have a look at the precipitation and the temperature generally over the next 5 days, because of course it is turning a lot colder as we head into this weekend. Easterly winds are arriving. Not going to be too wintry, could be a few wintry showers around, but the big thing is going to be the temperatures. Temperatures at the surface by day on Sunday, Monday might not get much above 2 to 4 degrees, and overnight widely below freezing. And those sort of cold conditions are going to last for the foreseeable future. Yes, high pressure is going to topple next week, as we'll see from the longer range models, but there is continued interest and increasing confidence that high pressure is going to rebuild back towards Greenland, and we will open the floodgates to some Arctic air as we head towards the middle of the month. Not only turning things perhaps even colder than they'll be this weekend into next week, but potentially a lot more wintry as well. So we'll focus on that in the second half of the video. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe. And remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if you start on the live radar, you can see we've got lots of showers as we've got a generally unsettled westerly flow coming in, but nothing too severe in terms of persistent rain. Of course, some of these showers quite hefty, especially to the north of London here, up towards East Anglia, down towards the southwest. A few of these orange and red core of the showers indicating pretty torrential rain. Again, localised flooding in a few regions, but equally there is drier weather around. For Scotland, more persistent rain moving in and a bit of snow over the higher ground, and increasingly over the coming days any precipitation we see over Scotland and perhaps elsewhere will start to fall as snow as those temperatures do start to plummet. But as I said, into tomorrow we could see some more heavy rain across southern and southeastern areas, especially through the afternoon into the evening. And of course we'll look at that in detail in a minute. If you put on the temperatures, you can see it is generally relatively mild today. Not as mild as it's been recently, but still around the average to maybe slightly above average. But as I've said in the last few videos, pretty much every day starting on Monday, the temperature is going to drop by a degree or two. Monday, we're looking at 13, 14 degrees. Yesterday, we're looking around 10 or 11. Today, more like 8 or 9. And come towards the weekend, down towards 2 or 3 for some areas. Now, if you look at the latest weather warnings, you can see we've got this rain warning issued for Thursday into Friday. It's from midday tomorrow until 3 a.m. on Friday. If you look at the further details, you can see a spell of heavy rain is expected to move northeast across southern and eastern parts of England on Thursday, clearing during Thursday night. The track of the heaviest rain here is very uncertain. As I said, 20 to 30 millimetres could fall in 6 to 9 hours, maybe to 40 to 50 millimetres in a few places. And again, impacts are more likely due to the very saturated ground at the moment. So do have a look at the latest UKV to look at all of that in detail. You can see over the rest of this afternoon into the evening, showers continue to come in from the west, but they should turn a little bit less severe from the west through the early hours of tomorrow morning. But then we see that spell of heavy rain spreading into the southern and southeastern areas. The UKV really didn't have much moving inland yesterday, but today we've got quite a bit more, which will mean that there could be quite a bit of heavy rain around. But as I said, there is still discrepancy between different models, so this could stay further to our south, or it could even shift further northwards. So if you are in the south and the eastern quadrant of England, do make sure you keep an eye on the live radar and the warnings, because not only is this going to be very heavy rain, but there's also a small risk of some very gusty winds again. Similar to Storm Henk that we saw yesterday, there is the risk that this could rapidly deteriorate, and the winds around the centre of the low are looking like 50-60 miles per hour again. But where the centre of that low will be, we can't say for certain, even only 24 hours away. But as we progress through Thursday afternoon, through the evening into early hours of Friday, the rainfall eventually clears to our east, and you can see generally showers become lighter and more confined to the coasts. Eventually, the high pressure is slowly building in, and you can see more of the showers turning to snow across Scotland, and elsewhere showers start to come in from the east as that wind direction changes. Still falling as rain, as we still have milder air trapped at the surface, and yes, colder upper air temperatures are coming in, but it is going to take a couple of days through the weekend into the next week for properly cold air to establish itself. But you can see it turns a lot drier, and the wind veers in from the east as we head into the early part of next week. There is the risk through Monday and Tuesday of seeing some wintry showers, but again, we'll have to wait another couple of days to see that firm up within the models. But of course, the upper air temperatures are going to be freezing early next week. If we look at Monday at 3 a.m, you see very cold air is starting to come in from our east. It's a little bit patchy in terms of the severity of it, but that is because we are just on the peripheries of that colder blast. But it will be moving in more substantially through the following days before the high pressure does topple back in. The other big signal of colder air mass is the dew points. Look at that, dew points widely below freezing, which will mean come Monday, Tuesday, showers will have an increasingly wintry flavour to them. If you look over the next couple of days at the wind gusts, you can see as we head into tomorrow, we're going to see some very strong wind gusts potentially through the afternoon across the south coast there into the far southeast. Again, it's 50, 60 or 70 miles per hour around the centre of that low. Again, huge uncertainty exactly what will happen with that because it is such a small system and it will be easily shifted in the near future. So it's going to be one of those we've just got to keep a very close eye on it. And then, of course, if we do look at the max temperatures, you can see through this afternoon, as I said, 8 to 10 degrees, perhaps at best. But as we progress into Thursday, nudging slightly lower, 6 to 8 degrees as we head into Friday. Potentially a frost in northern and western areas, and by the afternoon, only 5 to 7 degrees. In towards Saturday, potentially again a frost further northwards and westwards where we've got clearer skies, and into the afternoon, again 5 to 7 degrees. And then Sunday, the morning much colder in the west, we've got clearer skies and no showers or cloud or anything, but by the afternoon, temperatures really struggling around the 2 to 5 degree mark at best. And again, this is fluctuating between runs, but it's around that mid to low single digit mark. And looking to the early hours of Monday, a widespread frost is coming as we do see that cold air properly establish itself. So you can see it is a big downwards trend over the next 5 days, from going from generally average to slightly above average temperatures right now with rain around, to very cold and frosty and potentially slightly wintry as we head into the start of next working week. Even those areas further northwards and westwards that don't look like they're going to have the most severe upper air temperatures, they don't look like they're going to have many showers at all, could actually have the coldest temperatures with the light winds, clear skies. It could allow those temperatures to absolutely plummet. And of course, we are in the midst of winter, we're near enough the middle of winter now, so it does mean any inversion is just going to be at the top end in terms of the cold potential there. So we will just have to see exactly what those temperatures come out with next week. But it is looking cold, potentially very cold in places, very frosty, and there is a risk, as I said, into the medium to longer term of it even becoming snowy as well. So do have a look at that longer term potential. The GFS runs have been a little bit all over the place, but they all are broadly showing a very similar pattern of higher pressure moving towards Greenland and opening the floodgates to northeasterly winds. Now, some of the runs last night, like the 6 o'clock run from yesterday evening, the pub run, as some like to know, like to call it, was even more severe than the midday run yesterday. Did absolutely smash off with northeasterly wind and widespread snow. The runs this morning have slightly backed off from that, which is kind of expected, as that is very much on the most severe end, and they're now slightly on the milder end of the GFS ensembles, but regardless, they are still cold and they are still potentially wintry, just perhaps not quite as severe and don't quite have the longevity that other runs have got. You can see, though, over the coming days, westerly winds continue to push in, high pressure building over the top of us, and we start to see those easterly winds push in, and the easterly winds properly arrive through Monday into Tuesday, and that's where we could see any wintry potential, where you can see those greens in the south with a strong easterly wind, allowing showers to come in off the North Sea. But very quickly through Tuesday into Wednesday, the high pressure does topple, and that will essentially cut off the colder flow, and it will mean that the high pressure just sits on top of us. We lose any showers, but we still remain fairly cold. Temperatures may nudge up, may nudge slightly up, but maybe up to 5 or 6 degrees at best. Still average to below average temperatures. Beyond that, though, the high pressure is going to retrogress towards Greenland. That's what a lot of the models are agreeing with now. Pretty high confidence in this. But then it's what happens. How quickly does cold air move in? What exactly is the wind direction? And what sort of cold pooling do we have to our northeast? These are the small details that are going to decide between whether it just goes cold and potentially a little bit wintry, and potentially severely cold and severely wintry. Anything on that spectrum is in the possibility range at this stage. Now the GFS builds up towards Greenland but doesn't quite establish itself, so we do pull in a cold northeasterly or easterly wind, and it would go wintry perhaps for a time, but it wouldn't be anywhere near as severe as some of the runs from yesterday where we saw some of those darker blues of the tropospheric polar vortex moving in. So GFS today, the 6 o'clock run, still cold. If we have a look at the upper air temperatures, the -10 isotherm still just about gets in the longer range. You can see that -10 isotherm just about gets in, but it's not quite as wintry and not quite as severely cold and sustained as some of the other recent runs have been. Longer range, though, you can see eventually the high pressure topples. It tries to move towards Greenland again, and then we see a battle between southwesterlies and northeasterlies. Eventually, it does look like the southwesterlies win outright in the extended range. So it is very interesting, and we have to keep a very close eye on it. But yes, GFS not quite as severe as it has been over the last 24 hours, but it still is on the same lines of a Greenland high, developing northerly or northeasterly winds. Now, if you compare to the latest GM, again, westerly flow continues to come in over the next couple of days, but then high pressure builds in by Friday into Saturday. Easterly winds arrive through Monday into Tuesday, could be wintry on its southern flank. And then we see the high pressure topples, and then it edges towards Greenland, and then we could open the floodgates to the northeasterlies. This high pressure system up towards Greenland from the GM is a lot stronger than the GFS today, and is more inclined with the GFS runs from yesterday. And you can see that low pressure is clearing into Europe, and you can see on the back edge of this low eventually, as it gets into Europe, we would see the floodgates open to the -5 isotherm, maybe even the -10 isotherm as well, with bitterly cold air arriving. Temperature deviation showing you the huge amount of cold pooling to our northeast. That is pretty ridiculous, I must say. It is absolutely freezing across Scandinavia, Eastern Europe, in towards Russia, and that is where our air could be coming from if we did follow on from this latest GEM run. So very interesting once again, and could be going severely cold from the GM. The big thing I take from this run is the strength of that Greenland high. That would really give a sustained blocking pattern. You look out to our northeast, low pressure out towards Canada. If you look to the northeast of Canada, there is very little low pressure at all. So I do not see the jet stream breaking through it within the next 5 days beyond this frame. So yeah, would be sending us very cold, severely cold, and most likely severely wintry with this northeasterly wind coming in. Now, to look at the latest ECMWF, again, westerly flow over the next couple of days, high pressure builds in, and we see that easterly wind in through Monday and Tuesday. Perhaps not quite as a sustained easterly wind and not quite as strong, so perhaps not quite as wintry. But that is still up for debate. We'll have to wait for the short-range models, of course, to get it in its time frame. It'll probably be tomorrow where we'll be able to have a look at that in detail. The high pressure tries to move towards Greenland, and it does have some success, but it has a little bit of difficulty losing the higher pressure towards Europe. So what this essentially would mean is it would turn colder, but it would perhaps take slightly longer to do it, as this low is only slowly edging southwards and eastwards instead of flooding south and eastwards like the GM. So it is very similar to the GM, blocked, massive Greenland high, and again a huge cold pool to our northeast, but it might just take another couple of days for it to clear and to fully bring in that northeasterly wind. So no major changes since yesterday in terms of confidence, perhaps even increased confidence in this cold or severely cold pattern setting up. The details are going to be very difficult to pinpoint in the near future because, of course, we can see from all three of the different runs, they're all showing a broadly similar evolution with a Greenland high, but bringing vastly different conditions to the surface. GFS would be very cold but frosty and drier. The GM would be severely cold and potentially severely wintry, but takes a little bit longer. The ECMWF perhaps similar, but again, it's taking even longer than the GM for that to pull through. So I have to keep a very close eye on this, but it is continuing to be incredibly interesting, and you can see the confidence is continually there, if not sustaining and building on itself within the ensembles. You can just see that downwards trend, that negative gradient over the next 5 or 6 days from around 1 or 2 degrees at 850 HPA down towards -8 or -9 come Sunday through to Monday. Eventually, those upper temperatures do slowly rise, but as we'll see in a minute, the 2-metre temperatures from the ensembles don't really rise at all, and that's because an inversion will take place, and generally just cold air is trapped to the surface, with milder air swirling above. And then you can see around the 12th, 13th of January, and around that 8 to 10 day point, pretty much where the GM and the Eastern WF get to, with that high pressure building towards Greenland, the floodgates could open. And you can see here from around the 13th to the 19th of January, the ensemble mean is down towards -5, if not slightly lower, which is pretty big confidence, pretty severe indeed for the extended range. And the big note is those extend of the runs down towards that -10 level. Again, because this is coming in from the north or northeast, we're unlikely to see anything get down to -15, or at least for southern areas, it's very unlikely as it's taking a fairly long sea track. If it was an easterly wind, -15 to even as low as -20 is plausible. That sort of beast from the east levels. This coming in from the northeast, it'd be a lot more difficult to get much below -10. So anything around that -10 is pretty severely cold, and you can see there is a good quarter to a third of runs getting there. The GFS just about hits there, but you can see it is a little bit more anomalous as it does rise quite substantially. Of course, there are still some milder runs, but really they're just about touching average, and it is incredible to be seeing this ensemble chart pretty much showing the majority of the ensemble members for the majority of this 2-week period below average, and significantly below average with that, compared to the significantly above average we've had pretty much the whole of 2023. So yeah, well, this is really setting up to potentially be a below average month, and maybe even quite far below average month, after every month in 2023 was above average. The one thing that we do need to keep an eye on is the precipitation as well, because yes, a lot of you are interested in if it's going to get cold, but really, is it going to get cold for the prospects of snow? That's the big question that we have, and I've tried to refrain to talk about snow in too much detail, because I know that people will be very interested and will want to know, will we see snow? Now, if we do look at the new snow depth spikes, you can see there are some small snow depth spikes between Monday and Tuesday, and that's when that easterly flow comes in, and there is interest in some showers, some falling snow, maybe even a dusting, but we're not looking at anything significant at all. The interest builds though from the 13th onwards, where we start to see increased precipitation. What you'll notice is that we don't have massive snow spikes here, but there are quite frequent and a few larger spikes. But if you compare it to precipitation, it is not particularly different at all. The precipitation and the new snow depth spikes in the longer range are broadly very similar. Not exactly the same, but broadly very similar, which indicates that the majority of runs that are producing precipitation are cold enough for that to be falling as snow. So that just gives you the indication that in the longer term, majority of runs are showing much of the precipitation falling as in wintry nature, which does open the door for more snowfall, potentially even significant snowfall into the longer range. Of course, we cross-model consensus, and if we look at the latest ECMWF, it follows a very similar trend. Very cold towards the weekend with a big drop-off. Upper temperatures rise. You can see where the operational ECMWF gets to, where it's just above average with that high pressure system building towards Greenland. And then we see that opening the floodgates to that northerly flow. And you can see the majority of runs are down towards that -5 level. Very strong clustering there. And even some down to the -10. And even a couple getting close towards -15. So you could argue that the ECMWF ensembles here are perhaps even more severe in some of their runs in the extended range. And of course, you can see quite a bit of precipitation there. We can't see the new snow depth spikes on the ECMWF ensembles, but regardless, quite a lot of precipitation there falling with some very cold ensemble charts. So this is going to be incredibly interesting over the course of the next couple of weeks. I don't want to say it's definitive that we're going to see a very cold spell, but it is looking increasingly likely, and there is the highest confidence in a pretty severe cold spell that we've had in a couple of years, I must say. Yes, last winter we did have some very cold spells, but they weren't anything severe in terms of the -10 isotherm coming in. Yes, we saw blocking patterns develop, but it wasn't a Greenland high, and we saw a lot of these colder spells being very dry with not particularly big areas of low pressure around, where a lot of the runs here are developing lower pressure nearby. So, at the least extreme end, I would say that we're looking in terms of sort of a similar to a colder spell we saw last winter, where we saw it very cold for maybe a week more. And we saw some snow around, but nothing too severe. On the other end, we could be in for a historically snowy spell, or at least one of the snowiest spells we've seen in multiple years. So we will have to see exactly how it does play out. But there is increasing confidence today that it is going to be turning cold, if not very cold. Now it's going to be nailing down the detail and the timings, and of course the severity of any of this cold air moving in. And that will eventually allow us, perhaps in around a week's time, to start looking at some of those precipitation charts to see if we're going to see some snow in the next couple of weeks. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.